then I'm going to play a fun game with you now. Because there's so many words that are used in popular culture that have sort of like a psychological base and sometimes don't, but people just sort of decide that it does. And one of the other buzzwords that I've been seeing around lately is, or this term of narcissistic abuse.
Okay. Okay. I don't know that I've heard people say narcissistic abuse, but narcissistic personality and just very, very much using that term just to describe
Oh
people that
no,
are.
girl, they are saying narcissistic personality and saying,
I'm
no, this
like,
person
tell
is
me.
narcissistic.
Hmm.
And then they're like, people are walking around saying that they have experienced narcissistic abuse.
Mm, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
S- so I think it's a combination of um, this sort of freely giving people narcissistic personality disorder and not understanding that people can have personality traits that's not necessarily a disorder, and just sort of like assigning that freely, but assigning it
Hmm.
freely to individuals who they may have difficult relationships with on
Hmm.
one end of the spectrum, towards
Yeah.
assigning it to their abusers. So people who have verbally or even physically, emotionally abused them.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that I tend to lean on the side of really not needing to label what somebody is doing to you other than to say like this is abusive, right? Like this is unacceptable, this is abusive. And then when we go into labeling what kind of abuse it is and all of that, it's like I don't understand. I think that damage can be done, and I don't see it serving any additional benefit, right? And I think that that's where I feel like popular culture and psychology can do better at separating out, like identifying symptoms for people to say, if these things are happening to you, this is abusive, you can reach out for support, you shouldn't be in relationships with people who do things like this. But to be able to say it's this kind of abuse or that kind of abuse, and to, like, there's no point in that. And I think it can be damaging. And I think it's
Yeah.
damaging to one, just because you could be wrong, but then it can excuse behavior, but it can also really stigmatize people who struggle with personality disorders, that are working on them. It doesn't mean that they're abusive because you have a personality disorder. So there's a lot of harm that can be done by labeling people unnecessarily, and doesn't serve. I don't think it serves an additional purpose.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, love it. Here's the other one, and my students love to throw this out at me a lot, before we get to the psychological disorders chapter. Telling people that they're acting bipolar.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, people say that all the time. It makes me cringe every single time. And it makes it hard, I think, for, us to be able to do our job. Like if you are diagnosing somebody with bipolar disorder, and to be able to explain it and talk about it and not be this horrible stigmatized thing, because people just throw that word around there like to describe somebody that shifts mood. Even the way I think that what the qualities that somebody usually use to attribute that word to aren't actually what the disorder defines.
Yeah.
And so you're
So
like, oh, this person is up and down a lot when I talk to them, so they're bipolar. Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking? That is not
So
okay.
with my when my students, so there are two things that I've observed with that. With my students, they're like, "Well, this person acts bipolar," and I'm like, "Okay." When we go through the big five of personality, I'm like, more than likely, what you're describing is someone who may score high on the neuroticism
Hmm.
marker within right, where like their moods and their emotions shift rapidly. Yes, that might be a
Hmm.
personality trait, but not, it doesn't mean that there's like a disorder per se. And then the other way that is
Hmm.
used a lot is that it's a lot of times we see celebrities quote unquote behaving badly, and
Hmm.
that is what is sort of assigned to them.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
you noticed that?
Yeah. I do. I get a lot of questions on, people asking me to comment, like, what do you think this person has? And I'm like, that is a really bad question. I don't know that person. I haven't assessed that person. Any clinician that would diagnose someone that they've never met that's an unethical thing to do. It's irresponsible. What the public presents, first of all, is not necessarily who somebody actually is, or does it reflect what's going on for them. There's so many issues with that. And I think that like we got to be a lot more responsible with doing that. And yeah, we got to be a lot more responsible. And I think I appreciate celebrities that come out and talk about their struggles with mental illness. And I think when they do that, it usually actually comes out a lot different and more humane. So yeah, we need to not do that.
You need to teach these. I don't know who these people are, but I need you to find them. And okay, this is gonna be the last part of this little game that just popped into my head. This was not my plan in talking to you, and then we're gonna get back to your path towards Black Girl Doctor. Doing some form of therapy or processing in public forums, on social media, in clubhouse rooms.
Yeah. This is a good game.
You are picking up on all of the things that drive psychologists up the wall completely. And so it's one, maybe we started this conversation talking about Clubhouse and some of the things that have been sticky as I'm listening and learning how people are using Clubhouse is just, the public processing of emotions, and not just emotions, but with a therapist, right? Like I think we can all talk about our emotions, which is fine if you want to talk about your emotions in public, but when clinicians are engaging in conversations with the community in a public forum, again, unless the person is actively consented to it, it is not ethical to do. And I think it's confusing. And I think that what I would want people to know is that therapy is very special, and it is a special way to process what it is you're feeling on a level like with somebody, and it's removing as much bias and as much of the outside stuff as possible from you being able to share and process what's happening. And as soon as you make it public, you pollute that environment and actually what it's supposed to be. And so I don't think of those things as actual therapy. It's a performance of it, right? And I think that I think it's possible for somebody to start it with pure intentions. But I also think when you do that, if you're doing it well, the person can unintentionally open up things and be vulnerable in a way that could cause harm. And you don't know what's going to come out when you start doing that. And so I feel like to protect people, it isn't something we should be doing publicly.
Yeah, like I always say, I respect there's a sacred part of therapy, and I respect that so much that when I see anything like that, it turns my stomach. Because also, as someone pointed out, there are predators everywhere, and you have just facilitated this person to opening up. And when people say this is a safe space, y'all, it cannot be a safe space, and it's just not possible.
Not a safe It is not a safe space.
Ow. Okay,
not safe space.
Okay, that's the conclusion of our. I don't know. We got to come up with a name for this game. We should probably play it on Clubhouse. But anyway.
I would also say I think it's the provider's responsibility, right? And so I think that it is our responsibility to not facilitate spaces like that.
Yes.
Now people can go off and do it on their own, but in terms of the work that we do, we should not be facilitating spaces like that. It's too much potential to cause harm.
Yes. And that's like the main tenet of our ethics, right? Do no harm.